We're starting off with the cognitive explanation of schizophrenia, and as we speak about this cognitive explanation of schizophrenia, remember we come across these explanations in the second section. As we speak about clinical psychology, uh, all chapters in clinical psychology, they are divided into three sections. And they are the first one has to do with the diagnostic criteria, the second one has to do with the explanations of a particular mental illness, and the third one has to do with the treatment and management for any particular mental illness. So for now, because we're doing unit one, that is schizophrenia, we are discussing the explanations of schizophrenia. Now, the explanations of schizophrenia here, we see them being divided into two parts. If I say two bullets here, the first one is the biological explanation, and the second one is the psychological explanation. Under the heading of biological explanation, we have the genetic explanation and the biochemical explanation, where we discuss the dopamine hypothesis. Since we're already done with that, now we'd be discussing the psychological explanation, that is cognitive explanation for schizophrenia. Just to bring to your notice here that we do not have any key study, nor do we have any example study mentioned over here. However, there are certain reference studies that we did study while we were covering biological explanation. And there's a reference study conducted by Frith, uh, that we'd be studying under the heading of the cognitive explanation too. Now, having said that, the relevant issues and debates and methodology for this particular topic might include: number one, individual versus situational explanation; number two, the nature versus nurture debate; number three, reductionism versus holism; number four, determinism versus free will; number five, idiographic versus nomothetic approach. Now, relevant issues and debates and methodology for this topic include and is not restricted to these five. Having said that, if we quickly move on towards the cognitive explanation here, just to give you a tiny little insight into this, when we use the word cognitive, cognitions have to do with our thought process and uh, the way our mind works. And when we talk about the cognitive explanations of schizophrenia, the general understanding over here is distorted mental processes. Distorted mental processes or faulty mental processes. This little very colorful chart that you see in front of you, this would help you have a basic little idea on the cognitive explanation. And inshallah, once we're done with this, I'd just want to discuss a couple of points, and then we'd read through what the content is that I want you all to read through, followed by an extract from the marking scheme that would give you an idea as to how and what needs to be learned to be able to know this particular topic. So the cognitive explanations of schizophrenia. Number one, there are four terms rather that I'd want you all to learn before we get started or as we get started. The first one over here is faulty mental processes. Faulty mental processes, or in other words, when your thinking patterns do not work normally. When your thought process is faulty, we refer into that as a faulty mental process. Just learn this for now, faulty mental processes. Number two, abnormality of self-monitoring. When you're not able to self-monitor your your self-monitor your thoughts, which consequently leads to maladaptive behavior. So abnormality of self-monitoring, or in other words, when you cannot recognize, an example of this could be when you cannot recognize your own thoughts. At times you are thinking there's something that's going on in your mind, and it's just you speaking to yourself in your head, which is okay. Most of us do that. But if you talk about individuals who have schizophrenia in particular, they might not be able to self monitor themselves well. In other words, they might uh, not be able to recognize, they might not be able to understand that the thought that they have in their mind has to do, or that the thought that they have in the mind has to do with them speaking to themselves. And they might end up assuming, or they might end up believing, perceiving, interpreting it as an external voice, which an example of this could be auditory hallucinations, when you're hearing voices, or alien control when you feel like there's an external force that is controlling your behavior, which again is a symptom of schizophrenia. Number three, the third thing that I'd want you all to learn over here is misinterpretation of perception. Misinterpretation of perception, when your perception about others. Now, if you see the first 2 points, they're linked to each other, and the next 2 points, they're linked to each other. Again, misinterpretation of perception, or in other words, when you give wrong meaning to neutral events, as we see it written over here. If you remember from the study that was conducted by Freeman et al. In the year 2003, that is a part of a syllabus and a key study for this particular unit, schizophrenia, as well. Your perception about others is not the way it should be. Or an example of this could be you feeling paranoid. An example of this could be persecutory ideation, or an example of this could be persecutory delusions. As we refer to persecutory ideation over here, if you remember in the study that was conducted by Freeman et al. In the year 2003, where Freeman et al. Used virtual reality to be able to figure out the extent to which they could identify persecutory ideation in a non-clinical population. I understand the study was conducted on a non-clinical population, but at the same time, we also need to remind ourselves that the core idea was to have a better understanding about schizophrenia. So when we talk about misinterpretation of perception, in other words, when you are not able to perceive things the way they should be perceived, for instance, giving wrong meanings to neutral events. If you remember, there was a library scene where the avatars, they were in the study by Freeman, where the avatars, they were not acting in a manner that could that would have meant that would have made you feel paranoid, but there were some participants who did experience persecutory ideation. So misinterpretation of perception, which might result in individuals feeling paranoid, individuals holding persecutory ideation, or to make it even worse, persecutory delusions. Number four, the fourth thing that I'd want you all to keep in mind over here is an impaired theory of mind, right? Impaired theory of mind, when you theory of mind, you could link this to the study that you did in AS, the study conducted by Baron Cohen et al. That had to do with the extent to which you could read emotions through merely having a look at the eye region of someone's face. And about this particular study that was conducted by Baron Cohen et al. Remember, this study had to do with theory of mind. And for the ones who still cannot recall, theory of mind has to do with your capacity, your potential to be able to empathize. So when I talk about, or as I talk about impaired theory of mind, right? These individuals who have schizophrenia, according to the cognitive explanation, they experience difficulty understanding others' thoughts and understanding others' intentions, right? For instance, if you are not able to read, if you're not able to understand how the person in front of you is, or what the person in front of you feels about you, which might result in your perception about that particular individual changing. And I mean, I could just feel uh, that the people around me, they don't really like me, that the people around me, they're plotting something against me, which eventually might result in a social withdrawal. Now, all four of these points, I just asked you all to learn them so that you know what exactly to write if you end up, so you know uh, what exactly is right, and the key terms to revolve around your answer if you end up seeing this as a part of your question in the CIs, a descriptive question as a part of your CIs. So there are four things that I asked you all. Number one, faulty mental processes. Number two, abnormality of self-monitoring. Number three, misinterpretation of perception. Number four, impaired theory of mind. Having said that, if I take this further, number one, faulty mental processes. When your thinking patterns don't work normally, the brain processes information incorrectly, like a computer running errors, which again leads to disorganized thoughts, and consequently this leads to unusual behaviors. One. Number two, abnormality of self-monitoring. The inability to recognize our own inner voice or thoughts, like our internal speech feels like it's coming from an outside source, which might lead to auditory hallucinations and, in some cases, delusions of control, alien control. Number three, misinterpretation of perception. The brain gives the wrong meaning to neutral events or experiences. Your brain gives wrong meanings to neutral events or experiences. Example, a passing comment is seen as a secret message. I mean, let's just say you see two people talking to each other, which probably has got nothing to do with you, but you take it in a wrong manner. You misinterpret their intentions, and which might lead to paranoid delusions or you holding false beliefs. Number four, impaired theory of mind, where you experience difficulty understanding other people's thoughts, their feelings, or their intentions. An example, a friendly smile might be misinterpreted as plotting. This leads to social withdrawal and problems in relationship. Now, pretty same. It's just that in the previous slide, you had all of this in the form of a flow chart, colorful one. And over here, you have these points written. You have all of this information written in the form of points. Now, if we try summarizing this and making it, shrinking it even further, this is what we have studied so far. These four cognitive problems explain how schizophrenia symptoms develop. Number one, faulty mental processes leads to disorganized thinking. Number two, abnormality of self-monitoring leads to hallucinations. Number three, these are just examples, not limited to these, okay? Number three, misinterpretation of perception might lead to delusions. Number four, impaired theory of mind might lead to social withdrawal. Now, I hope this is enough for you to have a basic insight into the cognitive explanations of schizophrenia. Now, if we move on to the content that we have here, schizophrenia is viewed as involving faulty mental processes rather than relying solely on physiological explanations. Now, prior to this, we were discussing physiological explanations under the under the bullet of biological explanation, where we had spoken about genetic explanation as well as biochemical explanation. Frith, this is a name that I was mentioning. This is, you could see this as a reference study. Frith described schizophrenia as an abnormality of self-monitoring. This occurs when patients fail to recognize that their perceived delusions are in fact just inner speech, perceived auditory hallucinations. This is, perceived auditory hallucinations. Now, see, your hallucinations and your delusions, they complement each other, they go hand in hand. If I may give you an example of the movie that I keep on asking you to watch, A Beautiful Mind, which is again available on Netflix, for just in case if someone hasn't watched it as yet. In that particular movie, you see the main character, John Nash. He was experiencing paranoid. He was experiencing, I'm sorry, persecuted delusion. He was experiencing delusion of grandiose. Now, based on his experiences, based on his delusion of grandiose, because he held that false belief that he's someone big, that he's someone important, he's a code breaker that is working for the Pentagon, a patriot individual who's trying to help his country. Based on that false belief, or based on that delusion that he was experiencing, he kept on experiencing hallucinations too. So, like I said, your delusions and your hallucinations, they go hand in hand and they complement each other. If I put it in a simple manner, ना जॉन नैश साहब को ये लग रहा होता कि वो एक इतने बड़े कोड ब्रेकर हैं, ना वो visual hallucinations experience kar rahe hote when uh, he kept on, remember, he kept on seeing William Parcher, the, I think his first name was William Parcher, I recall, the bald guy with the hat, right? So ना वो ये delusion experience करते, ना उन्हें ये hallucination experience होता, ठीक है? ना उस बंदे को persecutory delusion होता, another example from the same movie again, ना उस बंदे को वो persecutory delusion होता that the Russians are after him. They're trying to cause harm to him. ना वो रशियंस का सारा इवेंट, इफ यू रिकॉल फ्रॉम द मूवी, ना वो विजुअल hallucinations एक्सपीरियंस करते. So Fritz suggests that another major positive symptom, that is delusional thinking, may arise from misinterpretation of perception. Those experiencing delusions may be applying logical reasoning to the delusions. Like I gave you an example, how the delusions and hallucinations, they go hand in hand. So thoughts that are actually self-generated instead appear to be coming from an external source. These failures in monitoring can subsequently lead to delusions of alien control, auditory hallucinations, and thought insertion. On the other hand, inability to monitor the intentions of others can lead to delusions of paranoia. Now, all of what's written over here, I've already explained it to you in the previous two slides. This has to do with positive symptoms. Let me just highlight it here. Where did it go? We don't have it written over here. But just delusions of alien control, auditory hallucinations, and thought insertion. They're all examples of positive symptoms of schizophrenia. Oh, I found it. It's written here. Here you go. So these are all positive symptoms of schizophrenia. However, with regard to negative symptoms, Frith explains that those experiencing negative symptoms, such as avolition, that is lack of motivation, have difficulty generating spontaneous actions, right? This means that they find it difficult to initiate a conversation, a spontaneous action, but may be able to answer questions, that is responding to a stimulus. This may arise in part due to an impaired theory of mind, which creates problems in recognizing the intention of others. Now, if you talk about a usual interaction between two individuals, it relies on your ability to be able to read someone's mind, or to be able to interpret their intentions, or to be able to empathize. If you have issues recognizing the intentions of others, this might result in you not being able to behave in a usual manner. So, recognizing the intentions of others, a flattening of affect, lack of speech, and social withdrawal all result from difficulties in monitoring their own mental states and state of others. So, do you see the four terms that I asked you all to learn right at the beginning, how this entire explanation is revolving around them? So, to be able to exemplify this, schizophrenia, Frith tried testing schizophrenic patients. Frith conducted a test with schizophrenic patients to explore this idea. Remember, this study by Frith, if I talk about the 2024 to 2026 syllabus, this study is neither a key study, because even if you go on Google and download your syllabus and open your syllabus and you try searching for it, you'd not come across this name. So because it's not a key study, because it's not an example study, you cannot directly be questioned on this. But imagine for a bit, you get a 6-mark question where you're asked to uh, describe the cognitive explanation of schizophrenia. In that case, I think it is important for you to mention Frith, because Frith was a person, I'll just show you here. Frith was the person who was describing schizophrenia in a non-physiological, explaining schizophrenia through a non-physiological explanation or non-biological explanation. So even if you're not mentioning Frith, I think it should be okay, but it's good if you do, because here onwards, everything that we're studying so far has to do with Frith. So taking this ahead, Frith conducted a test with schizophrenia patients to explore this idea. The patients were asked to determine whether items read aloud, first option, were done so by themselves. I'm sorry. Items that were read aloud were done so by themselves, an experimenter, or a computer. So there were certain items, they were read aloud, and schizophrenic patients, they were asked if it was them uh, reading out those items, or it was the experimenter reading out those items, or it was the computer reading out those items. Schizophrenic patients with incoherent speech, which is a symptom, performed the worst on this task. So if you talk about the findings, the result of this test, according to Frith, schizophrenic patients performed the worst on this task, and specifically the patients with an incoherent speech. This poor performance may be related to memory and attention difficulties, which are essential for self monitoring. In other words, if you recall, if, according to Frith, patients who are schizophrenic, they experience problems when it comes to self-monitoring, or if you remember, the term we had used was abnormality of self-monitoring. Abnormality of self-monitoring is related to individuals experiencing memory issues, attention difficulties, which consequently results in uh, an incoherent speech, which is again a symptom of schizophrenia. Now, having a look at what the marking scheme over here has to offer us. This is a screenshot from the marking scheme. Cognitive explanation, Frith 1992. So the examiners haven't mentioned Frith in the syllabus. Nonetheless, they have mentioned it in the marking scheme. In other words, they'd like it if you use this word, this name, this reference, even when it's a reference study, not an example study and not a key study. So taking this ahead, the symptoms of schizophrenia are due to faulty thinking processes. The patients fail to recognize through a central monitoring system that the thoughts they are having are self-created, such as an inner voice, and instead believe these are caused by external factors. The delusions may be a way of explaining the hallucinations. Like I said, they both complement each other. And this is the logic that is used by schizophrenic patients. There may be a there may be a there may be a cognitive impairment of patients with schizophrenia, which could explain some of the symptoms such as speech poverty and disorganized thoughts. The patients may also have a less developed theory of mind and find it difficult. Again, I just highlight this with green. Less developed theory of mind, central monitoring issues, faulty thinking processes, cognitive impairment. So yeah, the patients uh, may also have a less developed theory of mind and find it difficult to understand the actions of others, and so may develop delusions as a way of understanding other people's behavior. Now, the descriptive question that I'd mentioned earlier is uh, followed by an evaluative question. So it's not only 6 marks, there's 16 marks that we're talking about over year one. Number two, if we have a look at the past papers, at times what happens is the examiner uses 2 bullets to put a question or to design a question for you. For instance, you may get a question that might say, describe the explanations of schizophrenia. So if you're getting a question that says describe the explanations of schizophrenia, you'd be expected to write worth 3 marks for this and worth 3 marks worth for this. So, and if you're getting a 6 mark question straight that says describe the psychological brackets cognitive explanation of schizophrenia, I think you have ample of content that starts from here, goes all the way till here to be able to answer this 6 mark question. Now, for this particular 6 mark question, remember, for any descriptive question, you have 9 minutes in total. A basic calculation for a 6 mark question, you have 9 minutes, I said. And how is it that you have 9 minutes? Because your paper is of 60 marks and you get 90 minutes. And according to that calculation, you get 1.5 minutes per mark. And that automatically means for a typical 6 mark question, we get 9 minutes in total. I hope this has been helpful to you all.